Hey everybody, welcome back to another Hoi4 Let's Play. I usually play Kaiserreich, but I think I'm gonna go on a bit of the Fire Rises stint. I kind of forgot to record for the first couple months, but y'all didn't miss much. I'm playing as Russia this game. I'm sure you know how it goes. Russia, Putin dies, and then they have all of his successors. And I'm gonna kind of stick with what was already going on. And yeah, I had a bit of a glitch there. I didn't want to give anybody seizures or anything, because one of the assets was freaking out. But basically, my plan for this game is I'm going to play as Medvedev, which is the basically normal successor to Putin. You can go with the communists or the fascists, but we're going to stick with the centrists this time, I think. So you see me going through here, all the decisions. I got to make sure to keep United Russia popular, so that way I can win the upcoming election. Yeah, there's always something going on in this game that's good, even though there are a lot. These Let's Plays are a lot longer than the usual Hoi4 game, lasting around, I think, 10 years. Most of Hoi4 games only make it to like 43 or 44 or something, so. And also the mod does run a bit slower, but I think it runs surprisingly well for how many countries they have, especially compared to something like TNO. It's so slow. Anyways, you see me, I'm intervening in the Saudi Arabian civil war, and I decided to side with the prince, the crown prince, against the Republic and the other coalition. I think that was the side I was supposed to support as Russia. I don't know. And then if my side didn't win the Libyan civil war, I guess they didn't win in time, so they just kind of pieced out. The other side annexed them. But they have like a replacement for that, which is the Maghreb War, instead of the Gaddafi successor, United North Africa. But I think that just gives the players something else to do in terms of interventions and stuff. Which, it's still pretty interesting, but it's oh yeah, you see me intervene down here in Florida, kind of similar to the last video I did, but I kind of did that just because I didn't want the Atomwaffen to take over and kind of end my run, and I couldn't be able to do anything about it. I'm sure there are kind of like fail-safes against that, but still, it could have been possible. You see me going through the first focus tree. I think it's all about deciding which path they're gonna go on. How to deal with the American Civil War and stuff. You see me intervene. I try and get all like the right-wing candidates to win, but this turns out to be a mistake later on. Trying to get the Confederates to win instead of the Southern Federal Command. I assumed they would they wouldn't join the National Front, but they do. So I guess they're like the other ally, the National Socialist wins that big part of Michigan. And the Patriot Front always wins, of course. But I guess it's one or the other for the Southeast for the most part, for those two. But, I think Russia's, you don't really have to worry about the economy at all. I set my taxes to bare minimum, and I was fine the whole game. I didn't even have debt. I probably could have lowered the interest rate more to build even faster, but I didn't, because there was a focus that you return to the gold standard, and that just lowers your inflation forever. So that's a pretty nice bonus, Other than that, I intervene in Iraq, and I want to support Iran here a lot, just because they're like, you can get them as an ally later on, so I try and intervene on the side that they're supporting. I don't really remember what happens after this to this part of the country. I think I have to go do something else more important. But you see, it's kind of hard to, I have all these big divisions, and I'm fighting against a lot of smaller divisions with like tanks and stuff. And they use up so much supply, and if you use up way too much, then you eventually just have to go back to the supply hub, refuel, and then send them on trains, because if you just have them go at like the normal sort of pace, then they'll run out of fuel, and then you'll have to send them back. That happened a lot in the Saudi Arabian Civil War. But you see me trying to intervene in America here. Biden's already gone, so now it's just Trump and the communists and the National Front. So I intervene on his side. It could have been a bad idea because they can rejoin NATO later on, especially if they go down that path, but I thought it would be the one that, they would most likely support. So I decided to go with him. I think China did lose the first war this game, which, they go down a bit of a crazy path, which is why I kind of side with Japan. when they do go to war instead of with the Chinese. If it was still Xi Jinping, I probably would have sided with him, or at least sent volunteers to him. But you see me, I'm just trying to, how important supply hubs are. I'm trying to get that one supply hub. Bye-bye, Wyatt. I mean, roommate. And, you see how important those supply hubs are. Because if you don't have them, you just run out of fuel immediately. And the second I do get them back, it's kind of all over for them, you know? I think the next playthrough, I don't know. I want to see them get, like, an authoritarian democracy path for the, maybe I'm just boring. But all the other ones aren't that interesting to me, I guess. Maybe the Jacobins, yeah, you see me looking at his focus tree right here, might be interesting, because, you know, otherwise I'm just playing as a communist nation. Actually, that might be kind of interesting, if you can go on and take over, like, the Americas and stuff, or join the Chinese in their war. It would be pretty cool, but I don't, which is too bad. But you see me trying to complete the missions, to build stuff, you know. Russia, you know, they get a pretty great economy this game. They have to fight all of Europe on their own, so they should probably have one. And that's really, I think the wars are really well balanced in this mod, you know. Well, you'll see later on they aren't really balanced well for the Europeans for the second war. Which, you know, is too bad. But I'm just trying to take out all of these smaller warlord states. And I think they just go down the center path. They stay social conservative, the constitutional American government. Or they go down libertarian path. I can't really remember. Carrie Lake becomes the leader. I know she's a lady, but I don't really know what she does. She's some sort of lady in the government. I think she's from, no, I don't think she's from Alaska. I don't know. Anyways, I'm just intervening on his side. The war's almost over at this point. I try and recognize them, the constitutional American government, in the hopes that, you know, they'll join my alliance, or they'll stay neutral later on, which you know, they do, but whatever. I don't think they really, I don't have any control over that by taking those decisions. If y'all do know if that does happen, then it would be appreciated. But yeah, I open up trade to the east and stuff, and I reunite with Belarus. I make the Union State, which gives me a pretty good amount of factories. For this video, I use I think self-propelled artillery is the meta for this mod, really. You know, it gives you a ton of soft attack. It's all motorized, so it has armor. So I basically had recon tanks, some motorized, and some support artillery, along with a few support companies. And they had pretty good ore, especially for something with, you know, not a lot of infantry and a good amount of artillery. I think it was around 44 or something. I do make a mistake later on, and I choose the wrong kind of, I choose a doctrine which lets me get more of the deep battle doctrine, but I miss out on a research slot, which, you know, is a big mistake. So when you're doing the army, always take the right path. That gives you NATO doctrine. I intervene in the Indian Pakistani war for a little bit, and you know, this whole game I was letting them buy weapons from me because it gave me more construction speed and stuff. So I thought that was really interesting. I wonder if that always happens when another guy buys supplies from you, but I guess it might it just always happens. I don't know. India also became a military junta. I don't know if that always happens when they win the war, because I think they get nuked at the end, but I'm not sure. But we're getting close to the, I think, first European war here. I'm building all my military factories and stuff, and I did have to intervene in Kazakhstan earlier, so I have a couple more of their states now. But not much else is going on in the world right now. I'd say it's fairly peaceful. I don't have any volunteers going anywhere. There's a South African civil war and a DRC civil war going on, but it's like, I don't really care. And also I'm doing BRICS Plus in the meantime, which gets you a lot of buffs the more people you invite over time. And I think the Russia path, it really is, I think when you go for the centrist path, you're trying to create more of like a multipolar world order, you know? Because you have the Russians, the Americans, and the Chinese now, or the Japanese and the Indians, depending on who wins, and that's like sort of the LARP. It's not a LARP, it's not live action, so it's just a role play. And most of the time I do choose the social liberal cadres because they give me more growth, but I think this time I chose the Neo-Tsars because it helps out with military stuff. You see my template for the split second there. If y'all want to go back and check that out and see if it's any good, then please do. But I take over the Caucasus here. Just, this is all the build up for the war, and I complete my entire focus tree before going to war with the Europeans. I don't want to waste any sort of bonuses I might be able to get. Other than that, I don't know. Here's the European war, really. A lot of doctrine. I did not build any Air Force this game, which, I feel like planes, they cost so much production cost, the IC is so high that it's just not really worth it. They get shot down so quickly. So I just tried to make as many divisions as possible. And this was a challenging war, you're kind of overwhelmed by the Europeans at first, you have a very limited stockpile. I almost ran out of the self-propelled artillery multiple times. I had a big deficit of them. And I kind of came close to, well, I did lose at one point, so I had to restart. I think that I cut that part out, but still, it's not an easy fight really, but really what you got to do is focus on encirclements. Either focus on encirclements or just trying to reach the objectives as quickly as possible. I think if you don't cap all the Balkan countries, then you have to use a lot of political power to get them as puppets later on. Which is, that's fair. That's fair. I think it's interesting that they have secondary objectives besides the main objectives. You see me trying to just take out Ukraine as fast as possible. I think they have one of the largest militaries. I noticed that Romania, Poland, and Ukraine probably have the most divisions. I think the Western countries don't have enough yet because, they start out the game with very small armies, really. But you see me get big encirclements of the Ukrainians and then of the Germans. And I forget about my southern front, which was a big mistake because I have to spend a lot of resources to close that gap. But then I'd make an encirclement of a couple German tanks, and it works out pretty well. There's a lot of stuff happening pretty quickly right now, so I might slow down a bit. I've been talking for about 12 minutes, and my voice is kind of starting to hurt. But anyways, it's been pretty interesting so far. I had to rest my voice for a second there. I've been talking too much. Once you take out the Ukrainians, the war's still pretty tough. You think if you took out them, the war would be pretty easy, but they still have a ton of divisions. The Europeans, you're fighting, a lot of countries all at once. And you want to take out as many divisions as possible, especially the German ones, because those are probably the countries you're going to be fighting later. And if you take out their tank divisions now, they won't have those divisions later. At least the German and the French ones. The rest kind of get obliterated when the EU forms. And you'll see a special little guy shows up, a special little guy who was on a live stream recently with another Hoi4 YouTuber. I'm surprised they got him on there. But I kind of realized, basically, I'm sure you guys have heard of Gunther Fellinger. He's a guy who wants to make ex-Russia. By the way, I don't like Russia in real life. Well, I think they're a pretty cool country and stuff, but, I don't like invading other countries, And I think they're pretty cool in this mod, and I think they have a great culture, great people. Just some wrong things going on right now, in the real world. But anyways, he's psychotic, Gunther Fellinger. I think he might be autistic. You really wouldn't strike him as autistic because he's buff and he's also old and he's Austrian. So it really just might be the accent and the German culture that makes him really autistic. It's pretty interesting, but I think he just might actually be. It's still pretty difficult. Even after all these encirclements, you don't want to overextend yourself. You don't want to get low on supply. You don't want to get encircled. You don't want to attack for no reason, or else you're just going to waste all of your equipment that you got, which really sucks, because it takes a while to build up those stockpiles, especially in the fire rises, when the mod takes place on a much longer time frame. But you see, they start doing all these naval invasions, and I do think the AI knows to go for the objectives. I just kind of race for the primary objectives here, just because, I think I know that I'm running out of all this artillery, and I really don't have a lot left. And if I do try and go for all the secondary objectives, it just won't really work. Which, is fine. But you see me just rush for Warsaw here, and then I think the other objective is Budapest, I'm pretty sure. Actually, no. Okay, maybe I do just only get Poland in the peace deal, even though I think I capitulated Romania, or got to Bucharest. I don't know. It would be more interesting that if you did get all the secondary objectives, that you would get those people as puppets. Maybe it still does that, but I don't know. Also, the Heavenly Republic, the People's Heavenly Republic formed, which is pretty interesting. You know, it's pretty nice. Also, after the war, you become like a democratic country, become all wholesome and stuff, because the EU you go up against is either run by that autistic Austrian Gunther Fellinger. I don't even hate the guy. I'm not using autistic as an insult. I just think he has a very simplistic view of the world, which is okay sometimes. It just seems like a bit of a, you know, it doesn't, you know, war is a pretty bad thing, you know, and he seems to be pretty in favor of it. But he seems like a nice guy in real life, at least. Just not, yeah. I might disagree with him on some things. I probably agree with him on most things, though. At least some things, not most things. But he seems like a pretty nice guy. And you either end up with him or you end up with the World Economic Forum. You will eat Z-Bugs guy, you know, the "Are you ready for the new world order?" And I try and send volunteers to all these European nations and civil wars and stuff. It does not work out because I need to get rid of that spirit first, and it takes a while for me to do that, but whatever. You get a lot of debuffs after the European war mind GDP dropped from 9 trillion to 5 trillion, and then it jumps back up to 7 trillion right there, which is pretty nice, you know. But luckily, he does take over the, Nigel Farage takes over the UK. I thought you would be able to get them as an ally, but this game, the EU was having a lot of trouble reuniting, like, the whole continent and stuff, so I just kind of cheated to let them take over. You know, I went over to the other country, I tagged over, and I deleted all their divisions, so that way they could reunify quicker, so I could just stop waiting around. I mean, it was 2030, and nothing was happening, which, you know, sometimes I want things to happen. Also, my chosen candidate, the Sahel Pact, you know, the Mali guys, they end up winning in West Africa. Pretty great, pretty cool. Middle East, Israel is gone. I know I told you guys to talk about Israel in the last episode, but, you know, everything's looking multipolar. You know, everything's looking up multipolar. Everything's looking up Russian, you know, which, pretty great so far for this run. You know, all the candidates I wanted to have won so far. We're a democracy now. Also, I found this little path. I didn't even realize that if you kept it in the middle that you could get a fascist or a social liberal in charge. I was originally just going to go for like a United Russia candidate who would be like the successor to Medvedev, but I end up going with the social liberal guy because I think of like a fascist guy. You know, you're setting up all these like kind of sort of corrupt or authoritarian democracies in Europe, and if you just go with fascist, then it just doesn't really work out, you know? So I end up going with the social liberal guy instead, which, you know, he seems to have sort of like a tech thing going on. It says he's a communitarian. I assume that's something related to maybe distributism, which is like, you know, redistributing wealth, except it's not exactly socialism, you know? It's like taxes. The rich are more highly taxed, and then UBI goes down to the lower classes. I think that's what was going on. I'm not too sure, but you get a lot of free market stuff. I've eliminated the oligarchs by this point. I chose to eliminate them. So I want to do my wholesome Chungus Russia path, you know? Other than that, really, I'm trying to think of what else I do in the interwar period. Oh yeah, there's Gunther Fellinger. I check out his tree for a little bit. I start building, you know, I already have so many military factories. I want to pump up my GDP. It's up to 13 trillion. I know as China you can get some insane numbers. Like one person got like almost close to 80 trillion something, which was pretty crazy. And you see me just expanding my army as much as possible here. I like doubled the size of it really. And I start running out of manpower too. That's something, is that I should have changed my conscription law during the war to something where I could make it a lot higher. I could expand the army as much as I wanted to. Because you do see, even it looks like a stomp, and you'll see in just a few minutes, it's still a bit of a struggle, the Second European War, despite me having won the first one. You know, people complain, it's like, oh, well, if Russia lost the first European war, how could they even try and start a second European war? Or, like, how could the Europeans try and do that? It's not realistic. It's like, it's not really, it's got to be fun, you know? The mod has to be really fun. And if it's not, then it doesn't really matter. Also, all the Gunther Fellinger images are pretty funny. He uses the same thing every time he declares war, and he has that funny-looking face for the portrait. But he seems like a chill guy. You know, I just think he might be autistic. You see me send volunteers to the Italians to try and, like, beat up the Europeans as much as I can before they declare war on me. And, you know, they don't even have, like, any mechanized things. It's all... I mean, they do have some mechanized, but almost all of their divisions are infantry, which is really interesting to me. I don't know why they did that, really, but that's something they just chose to do. And also, I would always recommend that you upgrade these. It has like the old upgrade system, the self-propelled artillery. I would always recommend you upgrade the armaments on it because that gives you a ton more soft attack in the long run. 100% war support, 100% stability. We're kind of like on a roll here. The Chinese do end up losing the second Japanese war. I do extend trade relations, but I think I choose to open up my sphere to the Japanese instead. Maybe if I was playing as the fascists or the leftists, I would go with them, but I decide not to. But the Europeans here, they are really struggling, against the just like what's left of their states, really. It's kind of tough one. Also, I didn't even notice until now, there's like a little Carpathian state that gets formed after the war, after the first European war. Oh yeah, you see him kind of getting raffle stomped over there. Just kind of brutal. I feel like China usually wins that war, but maybe they rebalanced it or something. Maybe they gave more buffs to the Japanese. Also, yeah, Trump ends up staying neutral. He goes with the America First path, and he gets like a successor. That's about it, really. Let me know what you guys think of abortion down in the comments below. Just get more engagement on the video, you know. Tell me what you think of abortion. Tell me what you think of just anything controversial, you know. Did you know that only 1% of my viewers are subscribed, by the way? Yeah. You guys watching this video right now, if you don't subscribe, you're kind of like a fucking... So please subscribe to my YouTube channel. I hope you do that. And, oh yeah, the Japanese collapse. I'm just looking through all their little, warlords that pop up. I think one of them, I don't know how exactly it happens. Maybe Xi Jinping has to win. There's like still a little bit of content left for him, where it's like this guy who's dressed up as a dragon is able to reunite China. And those are like, they're like the third wave of disasters, I think. Is like a third European war or like a third Asian war or something. Or no, the third European disaster is when the World Economic Forum people take over and it causes them to, causes like a civil war in Europe. I kind of forget what the American disaster is. It might have something to do with the atom waffen. Oh yeah, there's also accelerationists over there. But you see me, I tag switch over just because, I don't want to wait around for them to just do their thing. And, the Europeans have had enough time, and they declare war on me, I think, so whatever. I don't want to wait 3 years for them to take out the Italians. But you see me. Ooh boy, it's just a massacre. Just a total massacre, really. The AI does not have any armor. It's almost all infantry. In the first European war, they would group up their armor like they're supposed to in this new update. But they did not do that here. I don't know if they had any armor, but it's a little brutal, Communitarianism, fucking wholesome Chungus Russia, whoa, wins again, totally. Obliterating these guys. I do have a little bit of trouble, but I just need to bring my planning bonus back up again. And then it's kind of over. I was a little worried I might have to invade London or something, but I don't think I end up having to do that. Ugh. so far, I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. I know I've been talking, it's been a long one, it's been almost 26 minutes, or this video will be almost 26 minutes, but, you know, look at all those encirclements, put it on the wholesome Reddit, get yourself some Reddit gold boyos, upvote Doge, trans wholesome, Steel award. What goes on Reddit, really? I don't think I've used it, really. Like, I had a friend who used Reddit once, but he turned out to be a pretty weird guy. He sent, never mind, I won't get into all that, you know. But you see me looking through all their little ideologies here. There's a little nerdy kid over in England. I thought that was pretty interesting. But that's the end of the content, really, and that's the end of the video. So I hope you all enjoyed the video. Make sure to like and subscribe. I hope you all found it really interesting. I'm probably going to do more of the Fire Rises content, but have a great day. Subscribe, leave a like. Bye-bye.